The manga begins with an introduction to our unique family residing on the border of the Kingdom of Dogrand. We are introduced to the formidable warrior Lloyd Blanc, surrounded by 3 remarkable women. First up is his wife Evelise, who despite her cute face is actually the most terrifying dragon queen. Next is their eldest daughter Alice, who was the daughter of the Demon King previously killed by Lloyd. And then there's Claudia, the second daughter, renowned for her intellect and mystical prowess, also known by many as the Witch of Calamity. This is the true story of how this extraordinary family came to be. In the middle of a battlefield, a bloody demon lies on the ground, and at the center of this grim scene stands our protagonist Lloyd, his sword stained with blood pointing at the fallen foe. The demon, rather than expressing resentment or despair, is oddly impressed. He acknowledges Lloyd's power, marveling at how he was able to defeat an army of thousands. The demon, in awe, goes further to suggest that Lloyd may even become more powerful than God himself. Then, the Demon King, covered in blood and defeated, begs Lloyd to spare his life. He argues that Lloyd's purpose, the very essence that defines him, would no longer exist if he were to go through with the kill. He suggests that due to him being so powerful, others would become scared of him. They might even try to kill him. The demon then predicts a life of solitude and fear for Lloyd if he goes through with the killer strike. Urging Lloyd to contemplate the weight of such a decision, the Demon King implores him to finish the job if he is truly prepared for the consequences that would follow. Realizing that the warrior is not convinced, the demon imparts a rather cryptic farewell, saying that his death would always affect and be a looming shadow upon Lloyd's chosen life. Lloyd, who has still not uttered a single word, raises his sword. They say goodbye to each other, and our heroic protagonist kills the Demon King, putting an end to his reign. A small Alice, with tears filling her eyes, hides behind a rock. The girl has just seen her father, the Demon King, get killed. Another female demon, likely a soldier or a maid, advises her to stay hidden. Comforting the crying child, she explains that with the Demon King dead, Alice is now their last hope. Alice looks at Lloyd, who is walking away from the battlefield, and exclaims that she will kill the warrior someday. Half a year after this incident, we find Lloyd making a stylish entrance into the Dogrand Palace. As he strides through the corridors, a trail of ladies swoon over the warrior. He is being hailed as a hero. Ladies in the palace are filled with questions. Is he single? Is he not? The palace is buzzing with gossip. Lloyd, blissfully unaware of the stir he's causing, remains focused on his meeting with the king. Ignoring the fluttering hearts around him, Lloyd approaches the throne room, where the king awaits the hero. The king once again extends his congratulations to the warrior and then inquires about Lloyd's battle wounds. Lloyd affirms that his wounds have been healed, and due to the long holiday and bonuses awarded to him, he is now fully recovered. He expresses his gratitude to the king. The king then reveals to Lloyd the real reason for summoning him. A woman presents a map to both of them, and the king points towards a small area near some mountains. He tells Lloyd that he is entrusting this portion of his territory to the warrior. Lloyd is taken aback, as despite being a warrior, he still comes from a commoner background. But the king immediately solves this issue. He rises and officially declares Lloyd as the Count of the Frontier, recognizing his bravery. He then tells Lloyd that initially a mansion had been prepared for him, but something significant happened. The area given to Lloyd in the east of Rodmaya has several good quality iron mines, but in recent times those mines have been inhabited by monsters of various kinds. The king had sent an elite army, but no one returned. The king instructs Lloyd to eliminate the monsters, as after the disappearance of his elite soldiers, he does not want any more losses. Lloyd confidently assures the king to leave it to him. After Lloyd departs, the woman expresses her concern to the king. She worries that the land given to Lloyd is barren, and he might complain. The king, however, understands that Lloyd won't complain because as long as Lloyd is alive, he is content. Furthermore, the king discloses that in that land the Dragon King resides. This immortal fire breather could turn the country into ashes in one night. According to him, she surpasses even the Demon King. The king acknowledges that Lloyd is no match for her. The woman, now even more concerned, questions if the king is intending to send Lloyd to his certain death. It is then that the king reveals his true intentions. He wants Lloyd dead. He has wanted Lloyd dead from the very beginning. The king had originally schemed to pit Lloyd against the Demon King, hoping they'd both meet their demise in glorious combat. But Lloyd turned out to be much more powerful than anticipated by him. The selfish ruler of this kingdom has underestimated our stoic warrior. The king justifies his actions and decisions trying to eliminate Lloyd by stating that Lloyd is too powerful. There is no need for such power in this world. If someone is powerful enough to save the world, they are just as capable to destroy it. And especially after the death of the Demon King, there is no use of a man as powerful as Lloyd. Now, the warrior's superhuman strength is more of a royal inconvenience. 1 month after being handed his certain death sentence, Lloyd is seen riding a carriage in the suburbs of Rodmaya. Lloyd is left pondering if he has become the kingdom's forgotten warrior. The land he's assigned to looks extremely barren. He is not even sure if a monster exists here or not. He had expected the king to drive him away due to him being too powerful, and he is content with that. Little does our hero know that the king's true intentions are far more sinister than that. Lloyd contemplates if his current predicament is a butterfly effect triggered by a decision from his past. We're thrown into a flashback where a young Lloyd, burdened by the loss of his parents, felt like a mere inconvenience in the world. He carried no expectations from the world, and he believed that the world had no need for him. Until one day a doctor posed a life-changing question. Did he want to participate in a body modification experiment? And at that moment, Soldier Blanc raised his hand, not out of a thirst for power or glory, but simply because he longed to be needed by someone. The operation was a success after several failed attempts on others. The doctors were confident that the king would be pleased with their work. Perhaps their work was too good, as now the king wants him dead. Having triumphed over the Demon King, Lloyd finds himself at a crossroads, questioning the meaning of life. He has fulfilled his purpose, and now once again there is no need for him. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted by the cart driver, who, clearly making up an excuse, informs Lloyd that he can't go any further due to the road being difficult and there being no grass to feed the horses. Lloyd is aware that the real reason the cart driver does not want to go ahead is because he is afraid of the monsters that may lie ahead. He thanks the man and exits the carriage. The carriage driver leaves as quickly as possible, an intelligent minor character in my opinion. Lloyd ventures into the depths of the Mount Rodbyre through a tunnel, armed with only light equipment. As he navigates, the faint glow in his hand guides him to a sizable chamber within the tunnel. There he comes face to face with the Dragon King. The Dragon King, asserting dominion over the territory, questions Lloyd's audacity to enter its area. But our hero is unfazed. Instead, only one question clouds his mind. How on earth does such a colossal Dragon King manage to fit into a place like this? The Dragon King challenges him to speak and then mocks him, suggesting that he is too scared to speak. In response, Lloyd delivers a defiant and badass answer, asserting that he has long forgotten the meaning of the word fear. Lloyd, standing his ground, asserts that the mountain does not belong to the Dragon King. It is the property of the Dilgrand Kingdom. In response, the dragon warns Lloyd to flee if he values his life. Still unshaken, Lloyd prepares to attack, citing that it's the king's orders. The Dragon King, finding Lloyd intriguing, decides to give him a little present and fires a fireball out of its mouth at him. However, Lloyd stands unscathed in the face of the flames, seemingly unimpressed by the fiery assault. It is revealed that Lloyd defended himself by using an energy barrier. The Dragon King is dumbfounded that a human's energy was powerful enough to resist its attack. In response, Lloyd, ever the enigma, nonchalantly declares himself quite special and says that his body is already broken. As the dragon attempts to trample him, Lloyd, without even breaking a sweat, halts the attack with just one hand. The astonished dragon questions Lloyd's humanity, to which Lloyd responds that he's unsure himself. Lloyd discards his sword, declaring that he doesn't need it, and proceeds to deliver powerful punches to the dragon. The dragon is sent flying backwards and crashes into the cave wall. Smoke from the fire attack and debris from the cave rocks cover the scene. As he approaches the dragon, Lloyd notices the fearful look in its eyes. Lloyd reflects that he has lost count of how many times he's witnessed such fear in others' eyes. The dragon, now lying injured against the wall, is given a last chance to leave. Lloyd says that he would not pursue it if the monster decides to leave, but the dragon refuses to surrender to a mere human. The dragon chooses rather to be killed than to suffer humiliation of surrendering. Surprisingly, instead of killing the dragon, Lloyd inquires why it did not fight him seriously during their encounter. He points out that the dragon's strategic attacks involving both fire and tail were evidently executed to prompt Lloyd to dodge and exit through the tunnel. The dragon was holding back. Then he questions whether the dragon truly wanted to kill him or just wished to drive him away, thinking to himself whether the soldiers were also simply forced out by the dragon. The dragon dismisses Lloyd's thoughts as delusional and urges him to just go ahead and complete the orders given by the king. But Lloyd chooses to leave, stating that the order was to kill the monster, but since the dragon hasn't caused any harm, the order doesn't apply. The dragon screams at Lloyd to return and kill it, mentioning that its corpse would be worth a fortune to humans. The dragon is unable to comprehend why Lloyd would choose not to kill him. Lloyd acknowledges that indeed the dragon's corpse would pay him enough to buy a whole country, but the reason for not killing the dragon is quite simple. He is not interested in such riches. He wishes to not have any more unnecessary killings on his conscience. The dragon is now curious about the strange human that stands in front of it. It asks if something had happened to him. Lloyd decides to tell the creature that he is now a warrior burdened by the lack of purpose. After killing the Demon King, the kingdom no longer needed him or his power. Now deemed as a threat, he was sent to this mission with the hopes that he and the dragon would both kill each other. So Lloyd was aware of the king's plan all along. Now, even more curious, the monster inquires the reason for accepting such a dangerous mission, to which Lloyd responds that he has nothing. No family, no lover, except for his power. He emphasizes that he is no longer a tool that others can use. He has lost the only reason for his existence. Expressing his disdain for that notion, he turns to leave. Lloyd tells the dragon that it can live there if it wishes and bids him farewell. Lloyd is about to leave, but the dragon stops him abruptly. A bright light emanates from the creature, capturing Lloyd's attention. As the light fades, instead of a scary dragon, stands a beautiful woman before Lloyd, her presence shimmering with ethereal beauty. She introduces herself as Evelise, and then presents a suggestion to Lloyd to come and live with her. An unexpected but certainly welcoming development. Lloyd is staring intently at the woman in front of him. Evelise quickly reaches the conclusion that it is definitely due to her captivating looks, saying that it's obvious that human men are encapsulated by her beauty. But our hero has different priorities. He's more interested about the fact that his earlier question about how the big dragon was able to fit in such a small tunnel was finally answered. Evelise is obviously disturbed by his remark. Evelise, expecting Lloyd to express emotions like lust, confronts him. In his characteristically nonchalant manner, Lloyd replies with a casual maybe. This is an obvious lie, and she calls him out on it immediately. This response, far from satisfying Evelise, only serves to further fuel her frustration. She freaks out further about how nonchalant Lloyd is. Then, like any logical person would, she questions whether her beauty was too much for the hero and it ended up intimidating him. It looks like this girl is not going to back down. Lloyd redirects her attention to a more significant matter and proceeds to inquire about the meaning of living together, referencing the proposal she had presented earlier. As Evelise begins to recount his statement about having no family, a noticeable blush appears on her cheeks. She claims it is too embarrassing to bring that request up again. Our hero, being the gentleman he is, expresses understanding. He suggests that if the topic makes her uncomfortable, it would be impolite of him to force her to say it, gracefully moving on from the subject. Though it is a nice gesture, Evelise clearly wanted him to ask more. Seizing the moment, she grabs him and boldly declares her desire to become his mate. Lloyd, still not learning from Evelise's reactions, once again gives an unenthusiastic answer and simply just agrees to the arrangement. This man is capable of defeating the Demon King, but loses the war when it comes to understanding women. Every man ever. Evelise is taken aback by his reaction, though it shouldn't come as a surprise anymore. She tries to make sure Lloyd is aware of what exactly he's agreeing to. She even spells it out for him, and Lloyd responds that he is aware that it means becoming a husband and wife. Evelise explains that it is part of the dragon tradition for a rescue dragon to either pledge allegiance to the rescuer or to be mated to them. Lloyd still doesn't care about the reason. He states that whatever the reason, fulfilling the request is the only way for the tool, him, to be used. He suggests that there's a nearby mansion where they can live, but she insists that before making his decision, he should listen to her story. Evelise narrates that a long time ago, her kind used to inhabit this very land. One day, she discovered a human that had fainted. She helped him out of kindness. The human made a full recovery and was not scared of dragons. As a way to thank the dragons, they became friends. He then introduced the dragons to his people. His country welcomed the creatures happily, establishing a temporary friendship. They began to live together peacefully. Dragons kept an eye on other countries and protected trade caravans for the humans. Those humans were able to achieve peace and prosperity in their region with the help of the dragons. However, soon after that, the beautiful friendship between humans and dragons came to an end. One day, the humans sent the dragons minerals that they really liked to eat. Not thinking much of it and trusting their human friends, all the dragons ate the minerals. But the humans had other reasons for sending them the minerals. The gifts were actually poisoned. After achieving peace and prosperity, the humans no longer had any use of the dragons, and thus they had decided to kill all of them. After consuming the poisoned gifts, Evelise's consciousness faded, and upon awakening, she discovered her kin were dead. She flew over the very land where dragons and humans once lived together, only to witness scenes of terror. Humans were cutting and using the body parts of their former friends. She has no memories of what precisely happened after that, but when she came to, everything around her was engulfed in flames. The regret of her actions clearly consumes her. Evelise wonders if the commoners were unaware of the poisoning. She knows that the innocent children had no part in it. The land she destroyed remained barren. Her crime was not only dooming her own kind, but she also became the reason for the death of several innocent civilians. As a result of her actions, she became known as the Cruel One. She isolated herself and pondered upon her fate. She is very similar to our hero in more ways than one. And when someone finally came that could end her and free her from this life of isolation, she decided to give in to her fate and let the man kill her. But clearly, fate had other plans as our hero chose to spare her. Evelise considers her and Lloyd to be compatriots, and if he didn't kill her, then he shall live with her. Lloyd's reply to such a tragic backstory and the poetic proposal is just a simple, okay, no problem. This man is truly helpless. Evelyn questions if he even heard her, to which he replies that fulfilling what is expected of him is his sole purpose to live. He declares that he will do whatever it takes to satisfy her, then holds her hand, calling her his wife, and us all single. Evelise, finally getting a reaction she wanted for so long, is satisfied and blushing. Maybe being nonchalant is the way to go. Then, without missing a beat, he gets to the more important question: whether the whole scary dragon voice and calling him human was an act or not. She tries to defend herself by saying that it was to push everyone away, and also being alone has had that effect on her. Lloyd's satisfied and says that they should go now. Then he picks her up and then takes her to the mansion nearby. While he's carrying her, Lloyd asks Evelise to choose a room. She insists on being called Eve, and then attempts to force a smile on his face with her hands. After the taxing day, Lloyd sits on his bed, contemplating the strange turn of events, from being sent to kill a monster to now having a family. He wonders if he truly deserves it or not. He's deep in thought when Eve strolls in half naked, casually asking if they can sleep together. A bold woman and a clueless hero. What could possibly go wrong? The moon looms over the castle where Lloyd and Eve are spending the night together. What could possibly be happening inside this nearly married couple's life? Eve stands before Lloyd, with her long hair open and bare mesmerizing body right before his eyes. She clarifies her words, explaining how an invitation from the new wife means if they can sleep together. Lloyd, being an alpha male with unlimited riz, has no problem with such a request, and is sitting on the bed waiting for her. Making her way towards him, she tenderly climbs on the bed and, like a delicate butterfly, asks him to be gentle with her since it's her first time. Things are really spicing up right now. What happens next is something we shall never know, because it's morning already. Lloyd is seen washing his hair outside, near a well, and for some reason, we can hear loud banging of someone coming from nearby. Lloyd Blanc turns around and we now know who has been making the noise. It's Eve, who's been banging her head on the ground since morning. Upon inquiry of why she's doing such an act, Eve turns around and curses him with the most foul of words. Someone is pretty pissed. She screams at him for ruining her first night as a wife. They both were in the same room, on the same bed, and yet he did nothing to her. Is he even a man? Lloyd clutches his chin, and with zero clue of the context being referred to here, he exclaims how he slept like a little baby, and though the two were on the same bed, he didn't feel like it was tight at all. There is no hope for this man. She bangs her tiny fists on his chest and screams at him for not doing the deed to her. He grabs her tiny hands and asks her to explain. Forced to explain what she means, poor Eve starts blushing, and still in her black bra and underwear, she tells how she was expecting to mate with him. Giving her a confused look, he tells her how mating is usually done between couples in love. He then gives her an inquisitive look, staring directly in her eyes, and asks if she loves him. Yanking her face away from his, Eve avoids his question about love and says how she didn't know that humans were the first to fall in love and then start mating. Our protagonist isn't backing down now and tells her that it is the duty of the husband to satisfy the wife, and if she wants, they should start mating right here and right now. Alarm bells start to ring in her ears, and Eve uses her dragon wings to push herself away from Lloyd, and after keeping a safe distance from each other, she suggests that they mustn't do anything at all until they fall in love. Looks like the dragon wants to follow the laws of the humans, but only for the mating part and nothing else. Lloyd gets the idea and agrees with her, finally something he understands. Eve then flies off to prepare some food, like any other wonderful wife. Our hero finds the task of being a husband far more difficult than to fight any undefeated dragon or demon king. Wait until he gets a baby. That's when the real challenge begins. At the castle, Lloyd is presented with a huge dead chicken and some minerals. Eve tells him to eat it since it is her favorite mineral and he might love it too. Being a human, he finds it absurd but takes a bite nonetheless. And with a mouthful, tells her he can't swallow it. No kidding, Sherlock. She then takes the huge chicken and gives him a piece of it, but it's raw, to which she gives it a soft blow to eat it and instead burns the entire piece by her dragon flames. Poor Lloyd has to eat the burnt chicken piece, but surprisingly finds it delicious and offers Eve a bite as well. A few seconds of munching on the burnt chicken piece and we hear a scream from the castle. Eve is disgusted by the horrible taste and is really lost for words over how her husband is able to eat such a creation. Lloyd explains how her making this meal means a lot for him and it's the thought that counts. This man is surreal. Eve is fuming with embarrassment. Despite her making such an awful dish, he still compliments it and eats it too. She can't make such awful dishes for him in the future. It's her pride as a wife to satisfy her husband, and she must make up for it. With a bright twinkle in her eyes, Eve asks Lloyd what's missing in the dish. to which he tells her that the salt is missing from it. Wanting to make amends for the awful dish, she is adamant to go visit his shop to get seasoning and make the most perfect dish he has ever had. She looks at him with puppy dog eyes and begs him to take her to the market so they can buy some spices. After he agrees, she turns herself into a dragon and he jumps on her. And so begins their journey for the spices to make the perfect dish. They reach the city of Ian, which looks pretty decent from such a high altitude. Just some of the perks of dating or marrying a dragon. Lloyd suggests that they should land, otherwise the people would notice them and things would get a bit out of hand. Eve agrees and turns herself into a human, and the two come crashing down to the forest. This is her first time coming to a human market, and everything looks so good. Her eye catches a meat shop owned by a woman and can't control her desire. Eve grabs the large chunk of flesh and starts biting into it. This comes to the surprise of the owner, but she is more concerned about Eve not paying the amount and screams at her to pay first. Lloyd comes to the rescue in his nonchalant way and hands her the pieces of coins, apologizing for his wife's strange methods. No one has ever called her strange before, and this makes her fall into shame. Lloyd then explains to her the concept of buying before trying in this human market, where they must buy the items and then they would be allowed to try and eat it. Eve has never been to a market before and soon understands this rule. She also coaxes him to explore the marketplace before they get the seasoning. Lloyd agrees to that request. They visit a clothing shop where Eve tries on different clothes for Lloyd to see and judge, but he pretty much gives her the same answer for every dress. She throws a tantrum and in the end decides not to buy any. Lloyd is surprised she isn't buying any, but she explains how her clothes are made of energy and all she has to do is memorize and recreate the same clothes later. She is such a smarty pants. However, Lloyd doesn't call her a smarty pants. Instead, he calls her stingy, but is quick to take his words back when she pulls his cheeks and forces him to call her thrifty. After shopping and getting the items they needed, the two sit together to chow down on some fine dining cuisine. She also plans to learn a thing or two about them as well. A well-grilled chicken is presented forward to them, and upon the first bite, Eve is sent to 7th heaven. The spices, the seasoning, all of which come together so perfectly, she literally starts drooling. Whereas our protagonist has the same expression on his face as when he had tried Eve's burnt chicken and even called it delicious. This man has no cure. Despite loving the dish, Eve doesn't know how to recreate the same dish. It would be a difficult task for her to master. She looks over her table and sees a couple laughing and the girl feeding the man food, to which she calls love spice. Like a toddler picking up on a bad habit, Eve picks up the fork and tries to feed Lloyd as well. In other words, she's adding the love spice. He stares at her, dead in the eye, and declines her offer, saying that he can feed himself. This situation has become very awkward, and Eve bangs her head on the table as she really thought that she had the chance in adding that love spice, huh? She now feels worthless. Her assumption about them being a couple in love is wrong. They are only a couple in name and have no love at all. At this moment, Eve feels that there is no such thing as love. Lloyd asks her if everything is alright, and Eve tries to brush it off by saying that she is tired and didn't pay attention. But their conversation is abruptly interrupted by someone screaming. One of the customers has risen from his seat and holds a wine bottle in his hand and the wife of the server in the other. He screams at the server for bringing him cheap wine and if this was his way of insulting him. Whoa, big forehead guy, calm down, it's just wine. The server tries to apologize, but the wine is thrown at his head by the big forehead man and is mocked for treating him with poor wine. The big forehead man comes up with a deal. Let's hear what he has to offer. He offers to take all the money and even his wife, and in return he won't kill him. Now, that isn't a really good offer. At least leave the money, he can take the wife. The server doesn't back down and tries to rebel, but the man has a huge mallet in his hand and brings it down with all his might to smash the server's head, who screams at the top of his voice for help. Out of nowhere, Lloyd has entered the scene and blocks the attack with his hand. The big forehead guy is stunned to see this new person and warns him not to interfere. Lloyd tells him that he had heard a call for help, which is why he's here. Our knight in shining armor. We would be nothing without you. Now, before we get all fired up and get to see Mr. Big Forehead Guy get his butt kicked, let's understand who he's even messing with. On one side, we have Lloyd Blanc, weighing in at 100 pounds, having defeated the Demon King and almost slaying the Dragon Queen. Whereas on the other side, we have a man who didn't get the right wine and has a receding hairline. We wonder who will win this fight. On a side note, this face-off is 100% on merit terms and not fixed at all. Now, back to the fight. Lloyd stands strong and tall before the man, blocking the huge mallet with his bare hands. He tells the man if anyone ever asks for help, he shall answer at once. The man demands that Lloyd drop the hero persona, but he doesn't and instead squeezes the iron mallet like it's some stress relief toy, and demands that the wife be freed. The man isn't going to let this slide and calls on his boys to assist him and beat Lloyd up. Lloyd throws the mallet away, which is caught very nicely by Eve, and she warns him not to destroy the shop while giving these guys a good lesson. The men charge at him 3 against 1, telling him not to underestimate them. He doesn't leave his spot, and the 3 men use their swords against him. They draw back, happy they landed a hit, but one quick glance at their swords and they're surprised that their blades are broken. They look back at him and have their mouths wide open in fear. Lloyd holds all 3 broken blades in his fingers and tells them not to use his weapon since it would damage the shop. This man is really smooth with his words. Lloyd knows the blades are still dangerous and makes some kind of an origami out of them before finally beating the hell out of the 3 goons and leaving them sniffing their own blood from the ground. He then walks towards the final boss, or loose end in this case, and begs him to not come any more closer, otherwise the girl with whom he is held hostage would, and before he could complete his words, he is punched in the face with a force that he could only imagine. The impact sends the man flying outside the restaurant, and he lands on the ground moaning. Well, those few missing teeth would look great with that receding hairline, and that is how we unlock a new skin in this manga. Let's call this the old man skin. Everyone in the shop celebrates, with all the pretty girls gathering around Lloyd. Eve reminds everyone that this strong man is in fact her husband. Someone is jealous. Soldiers have arrived at the scene and ask about the fight happening. Lloyd shows them the 4 thugs who caused the commotion and tells them the situation has been handled. They ask him for his name, and upon knowing he is Lloyd Blanc, the one who killed the Demon Lord, they are all honored to meet him. Lloyd hands the soldiers a piece of paper and asks them to take it to the king and tell him that the task has been completed. People all rush to the restaurant to see the great hero, and it gets super crowded to even move, and even Eve is getting squished as well. The server who was beaten up tells the 2 to follow him and he would show them the back door. Once they're outside, he thanks them for saving him back there. Lloyd gives him very strange advice and tells him not to fight if he knows he isn't strong enough. Eve gives him the bombastic side-eye. The server tells him that this damage isn't that much, since he can't tolerate anyone ever laying a finger on his wife, since that would hurt him more than any injury ever. After this event, the 2 walk back to their castle, but are met by a female who hands them a piece of bread as a token of appreciation for what he did back there. Eve is back into her world where she wishes they were a couple in love. She doesn't notice Lloyd push a whole sandwich into her mouth and she starts munching on it, but later realizes what happened and screams at him over why he did it. Lloyd tells her that that is what couples who are in love do, and so he was just trying to make an effort to do something that would make her happy as well. A few minutes ago, Eve was feeling sad that she isn't getting the couple vibes, but now she's grateful that Lloyd is making the effort. With a big smile on her face, she says that the sandwich was delicious, and while holding his hand, she tells him that she shall make him a nice chicken dish at home and is counting on his opinions. He gives her a dull, yeah, in agreement, which is what we would expect from the hero. We've had our dosage of seeing the couple in their mansion, so let's have some nature in this too. Lloyd can be seen being soaked with the water falling down a waterfall. He seems to be enjoying the peace. Back in the castle, Eve asks if he's going out to train, even though he is already very much jacked up. She doesn't understand the male species and their desire to get stronger. Nonetheless, she has no issue of him going out to train, but on one condition, and that is if she comes along. This girl has some serious attachment issues. Lloyd doesn't mind, and they both get ready to depart, and Lloyd tells her that they shall run along the track. But the very moment they start, he shoots at full speed and cannot be seen in mere seconds, leaving Eve behind in his trails. Which brings us back to him meditating under the waterfall, and he reassures himself that Eve would be alright since she is the queen dragon and being alone wouldn't be much of an issue. However, a huge log falls down the waterfall and is about to land on his head when his instincts react and he kicks the log away with a smooth karate kick that sends it flying into the air like some SpaceX rocket. That completes his physical training, and the next comes his mana training. He enters the forest to get ready to train when a wild forest cub runs towards him. Lloyd looks at the furry, cute creature and asks if there is a bear or tiger chasing after him, and rightfully so, a huge tiger or bear. Well, it looks like a tiger and bear mix. What a weird forest. Nonetheless, this mixed animal appears from behind the bushes with malice in its eyes, but upon seeing Lloyd, it runs away out of fear. It seems the beast had sensed Lloyd's mana, which is on another level, which made it scramble away in fear. This leaves him and the cub alone. The wild cub isn't scared and roars at Lloyd, and he notices that it's tired and starving, so he hands it a piece of meat to bite on. As he meditates, he gets a strong nostalgic feeling around him, and a horrible past memory creeps into him. He recalls someone crying. Maybe it can be him in a younger form. The boy is crying and begging his brother to not leave him, since he had promised. This memory quickly fades away, and Lloyd has the wild cub sit next to him and sleep. A wolf has appeared and it gives Lloyd a menacing stare. Its teeth are out and it's close to pouncing on him. Lloyd doesn't move. He assesses the situation and tries to understand why this animal is threatening him. He then realizes that the animal is scared but also doesn't want to run away, maybe. This wild cub is its baby, and it isn't approaching Lloyd out of fear for the safety of its baby. By this time, the wild cub wakes up and runs towards its mother, and the menacing growls have subsided. It starts to play with its baby and picks it up with its mouth. Lloyd eyes the beast and tells it to take care of its cub and protect the child with its life and not lose him again. He tells her to not be like him, not the person who left his brother behind. The beasts have left the area. He then looks up into the sky and sees that the sun is setting. It is now time for him to go back home, a home where his family awaits him. The moment he enters his house, Lloyd is bombarded with Eve, who has tears in her eyes. She demands from him why he had taken his eyes from her and left her all alone. Doesn't he know how scary it is to be lost? She then starts biting his head and getting all over him. Lloyd, with his same emotionless expressions, tells her how her bite hurts more than the wolf's. To this, she clarifies that a dragon's bite is definitely stronger than a wolf, and looks at him for some praise. Looks like it'll take these two a bit more time to understand each other. Lloyd gets confirmation that the king has received his report regarding his mission to eliminate the Dragon King. Eve feels a sense of apprehension and cannot help but inquire about the contents of his letter to the king. On the other side, within the walls of the Dilgrad castle, the king is squealing with frustration. He is fuming and wailing in the throne room. Looking at his condition, his assistant inquires about the reason, to which an irritated king shows her the report, reading out Lloyd's words. "I married the Emperor Dragon." Lloyd had told the truth. An image of the warrior being married to a standing dragon with dragon-like humanoid children makes the king even more irritated. The king is unable to understand why the warrior would choose to marry a creature that he was sent to kill. Contrary to the king's reaction, the assistant finds it quite romantic, stating that it sounds like something straight out of a fairy tale. The king, on the other hand, has reached the conclusion that their marriage is just a joke, and in reality, the warrior and the dragon are plotting something against him. The assistant tries to give her opinion, saying that it's not likely the case, but she is ignored. The king has already made his decision and declares that the couple shall be eliminated. Like a comical villain twirling his mustache, the king realizes that he knows someone that can defeat the pair. Back at the mansion, Lloyd finishes telling his wife the contents of his letter. Eve is rightfully nervous and asks why he would mention their marriage. Lloyd is confused at her reaction. Evelise explains that mentioning her marriage to the king makes her feel embarrassed. Though not for the most concerning reason, at least she's somewhat worried, unlike her hero. She further mentions that their unconventional pairing would have made the reader feel weird, while the king was more than just weirded out. Lloyd tries to justify his actions by explaining further, but before he can finish, they are interrupted by a voice announcing the arrival of the king's orders outside their house. The guard at their gate tells him that the king has given Lloyd another mission, this time to end the terrorist cult known as the Wand of Redemption. After giving Lloyd his new mission and papers containing information regarding their target, the guard then leaves. The couple is left wondering about their new target. Lloyd, reading the information that was provided, learns that the cult consists of people that are obsessed with mana. They consider themselves to be the chosen ones and call themselves mages. They possess the ability to see and control mana, and due to such powers, they consider themselves to be superior to people who cannot use mana. This very sense of superiority unites them. They have enslaved and burned to the death people deemed inferior to them. Eve confidently dismisses the cult, calling them small fries in front of her and her husband's raw strength. Lloyd is still focused on his research, reading the reports of the soldiers that have encountered these mages. He continues that some of the cult's members possess extraordinary powers, especially this one extremely powerful mage known as the Witch of Calamity. The report states that the witch is equal to the Dragon Emperor in terms of power. Eve is clearly bothered by this, taking her anger out on her husband. She begins pulling his cheeks, asserting how dare they put her and this witch in the same category. She is further insisting that the one writing the report does not know enough about her to make such statements. Lloyd, already aware of the king's plan, mentions that since they both failed to kill each other, the king is trying to kill them both by making them fight the cult. Eve tells him to ignore this mission, but he immediately asserts that he will take the job. Eve, visibly concerned from Lloyd's decision, snatches the report from his hands, arguing that since he has already defeated the Demon King, he's no longer obligated to follow the king's orders. Lloyd agrees, but asserts that the cult is still a threat, and they must be dealt with because, unlike the dragon, these people are harming others. Despite remaining unconvinced, Eve falls silent, unable to counter his reasoning. Lloyd emphasizes his commitment to fulfilling his duty answering calls for help. Eve understands, saying that she expected this to happen. She then pledges to accompany him and asks if he has any objections, to which he nonchalantly replies, "I don't mind." At the cult's hideout, a group of hooded individuals chant together, led by the witch Sophia. She, standing on the stage, urges the mana to guide them. Meanwhile, Lloyd is seen riding his wife. As they approach their destination, he instructs her to descend. As they walk towards the hideout, the pair is greeted by a remarkable sight. A temple is seen floating in the air above the mountains. Eve is astounded, but our stoic hero remains unfazed, casually asking his wife to join him as they enter. In her dragon form, Eve confidently believes that her enormous strength is more than enough for breaking them into the temple. Eager to showcase her strength, especially after the disrespect from the soldier reports, she brims with determination and charges towards the floating temple at full speed, but ends up smashing into it head first. She had assumed that the structure would crumble quickly under her powerful impact. Evelisa's initial confidence dissipates swiftly as she realizes that a mana barrier protects the structure. Lloyd reminds her that he had proposed entering, but not like this. Suddenly, a strange sound is heard from the shield, and small spiky items emerge from its surface, launching magical attacks at Lloyd and his wife. Disoriented, Eve turns to Lloyd, questioning the nature of these projectiles. Lloyd explains that they are called magic weapons, powered by a substantial amount of mana. Eve is astonished at the creativity of the human species and their ability to invent such peculiar things. Lloyd turns to Eve and requests her to lend him her foot. He then uses the confused dragon's foot as a spring, propelling himself with great force towards the floating temple. Like a bullet, he aims directly at the temple, and with incredible strength, he delivers a solitary punch that results in the shield fragmenting into countless tiny pieces. He is able to demolish both the mana barriers and the artillery platform. However, as they are about to enter, more artillery arrives at the scene. They prepare to fire at Lloyd, but before they can do anything, Eve uses her fire breath, burns the entire remaining artillery. Even Lloyd is a bit taken aback at her sudden interjection. She stands in front of her husband as the artillery burns to a crisp. What a power couple! She scolds a clueless Lloyd for not informing her about this plan, and without warning, using her as a means to propel himself into the sky. This leaves her spinning and dizzy in his wake. Lloyd apologizes and mentions that thanks to that, they did manage to get inside. Inside the temple, the hooded men are in a state of panic after hearing the sounds of the attack by their unexpected visitors. They have realized that their defenses have been destroyed. Two cult members are rushed to go and inform the founder and the Witch of Calamity. Upon hearing the witch's name, Lloyd recalls her as the one as strong as Eve, which visibly angers her. The cloaked men, trying to defend themselves, create a strong golem using their power, calling it the fruit of their cult's research. The golem is instructed to attack and demolish the intruders. Already angry, Eve charges up and angrily announces that she is the Dragon Emperor. Dropping an F-bomb, she launches an attack at the creature, and with just one blow, destroys it, leaving the cult members horrified and all of us impressed. Lloyd, in his typical non-expressive manner, applauds his wife's attack strategy of reverting a part of her body into dragon form, but his nonchalance leaves her uncertain whether it was sarcasm or genuine praise. He declares that this is the simple truth. The cloaked men persist, summoning an army of golems and calling out all the soldiers to fight the couple. Dismissing their creations with disdain, she belittles the cloaked men and labels their golem as crap. Urging her husband to proceed with the mission, she asserts her capability to deal with these creatures on her own. Without a moment's hesitation, Eve launches into an attack against their enemies. Lloyd is a bit surprised at her strength and confidence, but he does not dwell on it for long as he trusts her capabilities. He obediently follows his wife's lead, taking the path the men use to inform the others and delves deeper into the hideout. As he steps into a large room, a sword suddenly lunges towards him, but Lloyd effortlessly evades the attack. From the shadows emerges a mysterious figure, expressing surprise at Lloyd's reflexes. The man wears a cloak similar to the other cultist and has a strange mask covering his right eye. Revealing himself as Tuma, a swordsman from the cult, he declares Lloyd as his opponent. Observing the sword lodged on the wall, Lloyd deduces that Tuma might be the founder's bodyguard. Lloyd questions the wisdom of a swordsman choosing an attack that leads to the loss of his weapon. In response, Tuma mockingly asks if his attack truly seems unwise. Just as these words leave his lips, the seemingly immobilized sword swiftly moves, piercing Lloyd from behind. Extending his arm, Tuma summons the sword back to him. The blade effortlessly passes through Lloyd's chest and returns to its owner. Tuma, in a somewhat theatrical manner, introduces his weapons as Thousand, proudly proclaiming it to be the sword that claimed Lloyd's life. Despite the wound, Lloyd remains standing, not yet defeated. He cleverly deduces that the sword is a magical weapon, harnessing the power of mana. Tuma, equally perceptive, acknowledges Lloyd's resilience and speculates from the mere fact of him reaching this far inside the temple that Lloyd must also be proficient in manipulating mana. The air in the room crackles with tension. He asks Lloyd how he can possess such an ability to wield mana and still oppose the cult's teaching. Tuma asserts that those with the power to control mana are inherently superior to those without it. He declares that this is the simple truth. A sinister smile creeps across his face as he removes his mask, revealing a scary mark etched on his face around his eye. Lloyd, observant, notices the mark and questions if it's a consequence of mana poisoning. Tuma dismisses this description as lame and instead dubs it as a sacred mark, which only appears on the people blessed with the ability to use mana. He raises his voice, proclaiming the supremacy of mana as the ultimate form of energy. According to Tuma, mana grants individuals the power to enhance, transform, heal, and destroy. He further explains how the mark he had was the cause of others to discriminate against him. The inferior ones in his eyes were treating him as inferior. The discrimination that was faced by the mana users is enough to give them a right to take revenge and establish dominance over those without mana. Pointing his sword menacingly at Lloyd's chest, he addresses him as a fellow mana user, offering an ultimatum: join them or face death. Lloyd, growing weary of Tuma's incessant talking, in an indifferent demeanor asks if Tuma is finished. Tuma is taken aback by Lloyd's nonchalant response. Lloyd goes on to assert that he doesn't care about their beliefs as it has nothing to do with him. Confused by Lloyd's dismissive attitude, Tuma, after a moment of hesitation, defiantly declares that then Lloyd will die. He swiftly launches a fierce attack on Lloyd. From his sword, several swords come shooting towards Lloyd, who declare it a waste of time and start slowly walking towards Tuma. The swords make contact with his body, yet he persists in his stride. Tuma mistakenly assumes that Lloyd has accepted his impending demise, but he is caught off guard when Lloyd suddenly accelerates, rushing towards him. In a surprising turn of events, Lloyd seizes Tuma by his clothes. He is bewildered to find that Lloyd is unharmed. Lloyd calmly clarifies that he was aware of Tuma's strategy to hinder him by embedding swords in his body. Therefore, he purposefully ran through the barrage of swords at once, relying on his healing abilities to swiftly recover. Tuma is confused by this display of magic. Lloyd's wounds are healing at an astonishing rate, leaving Tuma even more perplexed. Lloyd explains that he can absorb an infinite amount of mana and begins to power up. He further says that he is different from Tuma, pointing out that Tuma's body can only accommodate a limited amount of mana. Thus, he has a scar from mana poisoning. Tuma, in awe of Lloyd's extraordinary abilities, expresses admiration, deeming him magnificent. However, Lloyd, having reached his limit with Tuma's antics, abruptly ends the discussion with a forceful punch that sends Tuma hurtling through a wall at the opposite end of the room. The cloaked figures in the adjacent rooms are startled. They shout in disbelief that Tuma has been beaten. Lloyd enters the room through the broken wall and inquires about the whereabouts of the witch and the founder. A young girl steps forward, introducing herself as Sophia, the Witch of Calamity. Lloyd is a bit surprised by the fact that Sophia appears to be nothing more than a little girl. Confusion envelops him as he wonders how this small girl can possibly hold the title of the most powerful mage capable of matching the Dragon Emperor in strength. Eve is going to be even more angry when she finds out that the person said to be as strong as her is merely a child. Lloyd introduces himself, adding that people often refer to him as the hero. The others in the room are visibly shocked as realization dawns upon them that the man standing before them is the same hero who has defeated the formidable Demon King. Sophia once again addresses Lloyd as a big brother and bows before him. Delighted to meet him, she expresses her joy, and Lloyd, though sharing the sentiment, responds in his usual nonchalant manner. In the midst of this exchange, one of the cloaked individuals asks why the hero is here, prompting Lloyd to unfurl the message from the king before them. Lloyd explains that the cult has been accused of various crimes, including terrorism and kidnapping. As a result, he has been tasked with bringing them down. Asserting his authority, he gives them a chance to surrender. If they choose to do so, then Lloyd would not kill them. The cultist, visibly shaken by the gravity of the situation, looked scared and uneasy. Meanwhile, Sophia, still trying to comprehend the situation, asks the frightened cult members what Lloyd means. Innocently, Sophia remarks that the words terrorism and kidnapping sound scary, and with genuine curiosity, she asks Lloyd if he is a scary hero. The cult member, on the other hand, realizes that despite Lloyd's immense power, they still have the Witch of Calamity by their side. In the midst of this tense encounter, one of the cultists explains to the little confused girl that the man before them is a bad person who is bullying them. Sophia turns to Lloyd and demands that he should stop bullying them. Lloyd calmly replies that he cannot do so as it is the king's order. Sophia looks scared. Suddenly, one of the cultists screams at her to save them, declaring Lloyd the enemy. Sophia, looking remorseful for the action she's about to take, invokes her magic. Raising her hands, she summons the Thunder King, and a huge ball of lightning and thunder forms above the tiny girl's head. Looking at the powerful orb, Lloyd realizes that the title of the Witch of Calamity is not just for show, but is a testament to the immense power the girl possesses. Yet, in the face of such powerful magic, Lloyd stands his ground. The little girl is perplexed and questions him with childlike innocence that why is he not fleeing like the others do when they see her power. Lloyd reiterates the fact that he cannot flee. Upon hearing this, a hesitant Sophia increases her magical efforts, summoning the Water, Earth, Fire, and the Wind King. As their names imply, they are spheres of each element and they get ready for attack. Sophia asks Lloyd once again if he wishes to flee, to which his reply stays the same and he asserts that he has a job to do and thus cannot leave without completing it. At this point, even the cultist members are scared of the witch's power. A cultist urgently shouts at Sophia to unleash her powers against Lloyd, saying that if she doesn't attack him, then Lloyd would capture them and then they would all be separated. Upon hearing those words, Sophia is momentarily swept into a brief flashback, catching glimpses of a deceased man and woman. The gravity of this memory leaves her deeply concerned and conflicted. Overwhelmed by the fear of a similar outcome as her tragic past, and pressured by the persistent screams of the cultists commanding her to attack, Sophia finally releases all the conjured attacks towards the hero. Lloyd stands firmly and faces the oncoming elemental balls that surge towards him with full force and speed. Not a trace of fear or emotion flickered across his face as he summoned a magical fist. Upon collision with the orbs, the magic within the orbs is dispersed immediately. Lloyd seamlessly absorbs the released mana. Undeterred and now pointing a resolute fist towards the cult members, he calmly repeats his call for surrender, mentioning that this is their last chance. A stunned silence envelops the room. Everyone, including the witch, are clearly surprised at the warrior's display of power. Nervously, one of them voices the fear that surrendering would only lead to a royal decree of execution. Lloyd confirms their concern, emphasizing that the grave crimes that the cult has committed, including burning whole cities, killing, and kidnapping, would inevitably warrant a death sentence. Little Sophia, her confusion deepening, expresses that her parents didn't mean harm, and they were merely chasing away bad people. The cultists, growing desperate, shout at Sophia to use her powers and kill Lloyd. The innocent girl, frightened by the mere mention of the word kill, recoils. The cultists intensify their screams, utilizing the death of her parents for their own selfish gain. They mention that if she does not go through with the kill, then the cult would also meet the same fate as her parents. Sophia is engulfed in a heart-wrenching flashback. Vivid images of discovering her parents' lifeless bodies flood her mind. It becomes painfully evident that the cult, through manipulation, has seized control of this powerful child, using her like a puppet in their twisted schemes. Sophia begins to break down, tearfully expressing her fear of being alone. In this moment of intense emotional turmoil, she lets out a heart-wrenching scream, unleashing a surge of her uncontrollable power. The room trembles with the force of her mana. Meanwhile, Eve, having successfully dealt with the golem, walks towards the room. She wonders what her husband is up to. Upon entering the room, she is greeted by a confusing yet frightening sight. Her husband locked in an intense conversation with a little girl suspended in air, surrounded by bright light and thunder, her mana filling the entire room. Her confusion soon turns to anxiety when the girl declares that her husband should die. With tears in her eyes, Sophia's supernatural powers of wind, water, earth, and thunder light up the sky in front of Lloyd. His wife, the demon Eve, arrives. She asks Lloyd about the whereabouts of the little girl in front of them, and Lloyd introduces her as the Witch of Calamity. Evelise is left shocked, and so is Lloyd when Sophia's body starts bleeding. Lloyd quickly recognizes the bleeding as acute mana poisoning. It's a case where the magic user uses more magic than a body's capacity, and ends up destroying themselves in the process. This can be stopped if the mana user is stopped on time. Before Lloyd can do something to stop Sophia, his wife transforms into her true form. She turns into a majestic dragon with her thunderous power lighting up the entire sky. The people around Sophia are shocked to say the least. They underestimated the world's strongest couple when they were just weaklings relying on a child. Lloyd questions his wife's decision of transforming because she will hurt herself in the process. But Evelise couldn't care less because she has to save a child's life. Lloyd thinks that even if they manage to save her, she will become an experimental subject like himself. But his wife shuts up the overthinker with a clear statement. There is no reason needed to save a child. She wants her husband to save the child with all his might. The cloaked people around Sophia keep pestering her to gather more mana or magical power despite her body's condition deteriorating with every passing second. They shout at Sophia to protect her so-called parents. They are blackmailing a literal child, and the power couple has had enough of it. Sophia keeps increasing her mana and gains more and more strength carelessly. She shouts at Eve and Lloyd to disappear. Her mana is so strong that even the huge dragon is pushed back. Lloyd finally joins the action and puts forward his hands to gather magical strength. A shadow from his arms grows as huge as Sophia's mana, and he manages to collect all the mana in his hand. He tightens his fist and makes all of Sophia's hard work disappear in a flash. Maybe Lloyd just likes witnessing action and drama because he would have done this way sooner. The people standing beside Sophia are puzzled at Lloyd's powers and call him a monster. Lloyd looks at the bleeding face of the child and tells her that it's all over. While looking at the hero, tears drop, and Sophia shuts her eyes before falling to the ground. Evelise manages to catch her just in time and gets worried about her wounds, but Lloyd reassures her. He turns to the couple, who are apparently Sophia's parents, and questions them. They switch sides in a split second and start acting like pitiful people who were persecuted because of the magic scars on their faces. Lloyd takes no time in exposing their lies and removing their fake marks. They use the scars to trick their followers, hide their crimes, and exploit their daughter too. The couple switches sides once again and shouts at the half-awake Sophia to get up and kill Lloyd and Evelise. Evelise is puzzled by the stupidity of the couple who are willing to kill their daughter for their own safety. Sophia picks up her tired hands and tries to gather mana once again, but Lloyd stops her this time. He holds her tired, bleeding hands and realizes that the child is just like him, a mere disposable tool for people. What Lloyd does next shocks everyone. He announces that Sophia will be his daughter from now on. He also threatens her parents to not complain if they don't want to die. But surprisingly, they take no time in disowning and handing over the daughter to Lloyd. They want Lloyd to let them go in return. However, they also reveal the harsh truth that Sophia is not their real daughter. They heard about her magical capabilities and killed her parents to kidnap her. But now, they have had enough of the monster in the shape of a child. Now, Evelise is pissed off and it's her turn to trick the parents. She tells them that she will let them go in return for Sophia, but in the midst of their celebration, she attacks them with extreme anger. She manages to trap the parents just in time. Lloyd also has a plan to protect Sophia from the punishment by the government. He uses his power to destroy the entire area where the fight happened. Evelise is shocked and impressed at Lloyd's crude yet cool plan. At the mansion, also known as Lloyd's residence, Sophia is experiencing a nightmare on her comfortable bed. The past day's events are haunting her as she wakes up with tears in her eyes. She wakes up and looks around to find Evelise, her new mother, lying beside her. She is surprised, but Lloyd knocks on the door before she could speak anything. He is munching on a piece of meat and assumes that Sophia must have recovered from the poisoning. He tells Sophia that she is at her home. That is when a very emotional Evelise wakes up and starts crying while hugging Sophia tightly. She bombards Sophia with questions about her health, and Sophia assures her that she is alright. And Lloyd, an unbothered king, very much used to his wife's behavior, stands at the door. He is still munching on meat. Evelise hears Sophia's stomach growl and rushes to the kitchen to make some food for her. She prepares a sandwich and places it in front of Sophia on the table. Evelise is not sure about the taste, but Lloyd, being the smug human that he is, brags about the meat that he cooked deliciously and was used in the sandwich. Evelise shuts him up and turns to Sophia. Sophia takes a bite and finds the food delicious. Her eyes light up and she goes on to tell Evelise that her fake mama and papa always fed her cold leftovers. The food she is eating now is warm and delicious. Evelise starts crying and hugging Sophia yet again, while Lloyd stands unbothered in the background. Lloyd, out of nowhere, informs the duo that Sophia's fake parents have been handed over to the state and that they will be executed soon. Evelise thinks that the announcement was too sudden, but Sophia interrupts and asks whether Lloyd and Evelise would be her new parents. Evelise tells Sophia that the decision is up to her. However, Sophia is just confused and asks if they want to make use of her magic too. Evelise sits by her side patiently and begins explaining Sophia's adoption, even though it is quite difficult to do so. Evelise herself had an extremely painful childhood and tells Sophia that children are beings that should be protected. As for Lloyd, he says that his reason is because Eve, aka Evelise, asked him to do so. His wife is shocked at the man's non-empathetic nature. Well, the man has his reasons, but he is just unable to interpret them into words. The silly little husband-wife banter continues until Sophia interrupts. She thinks that her new parents will be targeted just like her old ones, but they reassure the little girl that she needs not to worry about that. Sophia tears up once again. The poor child is experiencing warmth, love, and reassurance for the first time in her life. Her new parents just do not stop there, because it is their time to shine and flex. The duo poses together, and Lloyd says that no one can kill them. Eve quickly adds that they are invincible because they are the strongest couple. Sophia cries uncontrollably as Eve announces that she and Lloyd will be Sophia's new mama and papa. However, Sophia says that both her parents are dead already. Lloyd gets emotional too as he is seen crying for the first time ever. He goes ahead to tell Sophia that he will protect her and wraps his daughter into a warm hug. Eve is shocked at the sudden warm and considerate behavior, but Lloyd tells her that it's better this way. Sophia continues to cry her heart out and Lloyd and Eve let her do so. She needs to wash out the pain, and she can cry as much as she wants to with her new parents and in her new home. A place that she can actually call her own and somewhere she can belong to. Sophia is about to have a supposedly peaceful sleep after a long time, or maybe for the first time in her entire life. Lloyd and Eve take her around the mansions and tell her that there are a lot of vacant rooms around, and she can choose whichever room she likes. Sophia chooses a room and puts the lady down on the bed as her parents leave. She tries to fall asleep, but she finds the room very large and lonely for herself. Cut to the next scene, the sun has risen and it is breakfast time at the Lloyd mansion. Eve goes out to catch an animal that looks somewhat like a wild chicken to prepare some meat for breakfast. Lloyd can endure hardships and he mostly eats whatever Eve cooks. That is why she was fine with feeding him burnt or raw meat, but she wants to cook a decent meal before Sophia wakes up. That is when she hears some sounds from the room indicating that Lloyd is awake. Eve asks him to be the tester for her meat. However, she is left a little surprised when she sees Sophia snuggled up on Lloyd's bed. Eve asks him why Sophia was there, but Lloyd has no answer because he has no idea when the little girl came to his room. She was actually there when he woke up. The conversation wakes up Sophia, who rises to say good morning to her parents. Eve, curious as ever, wastes no time in asking Sophia whether she was sleeping in another room. Sophia begins by explaining that she was alone and that her room was very spacious and came to a stop, unable to find more words. However, Lloyd sums it up for her, saying that she was just afraid to sleep alone. Sophia looks embarrassed, but Eve, finally having understood the little girl, gives her a warm hug. She says that she should not feel embarrassed in front of her parents. She quickly side-eyes Lloyd too, because Sophia came to him when she was afraid instead of going to her. I mean, anyone would feel offended when a child prefers someone else's love over theirs. But Eve, it is not that deep. Dismissing other thoughts, she hugs Sophia tighter and tells her that she should come up to Mama the next time she's scared. Mama is warmer and gentler, and she will give her lots of pats and brush her hair too. Sophia understands and she tries calling Eve Mama, but stops midway and calls Eve Oni-san instead. Sophia, slightly embarrassed, leaves right away to wash her face. Lloyd and Eve are not sure why, but they are a bit annoyed by the fact that Sophia can't call them Mama and Papa. Eve, ever the expressive one, starts rolling around on the bed in annoyance. But she clearly feels like she forgot something. Oh yes, Eve forgot the meat she put up to cook, and so their breakfast is undoubtedly charred by now. Lloyd, pretty much used to the burnt food, begins eating without questioning. However, Sophia hesitates a bit, so Eve offers to bring something from the town in a state of panic. Surprisingly, Sophia offers to make something for breakfast. She makes grilled meat and presents it to her parents. Eve falls in love with the light seasoning and perfectly grilled meat, and Lloyd also compliments the dish by calling it absolutely delicious. This is when Eve realizes just how bad the food that she makes is. She says that she only makes bad food, but Lloyd assures her that he doesn't care about the food being good or bad. The fact that Eve cooks for him is more than enough for him. But Eve is unsettled, and with complete determination, she asks Sophia to teach her cooking. Sophia gets flustered and says that she only knows chopping and grilling, but Eve doesn't stop there. She wants to make good food for her husband and her daughter. With a big smile and a glimmer in her eyes, Sophia tells Eve that they will be cooking together from now on. They get to making lunch right away, as Eve asks Lloyd to lend them a helping hand. Sophia is reminded of her beloved real parents when she gets to the kitchen with her new Mama and Papa. Her parents were the ones who kept her by their side in the kitchen, and she ended up learning how to cook. Lloyd tries lighting up the fire, but accidentally uses too much power and ends up destroying the stove. Cut to the next scene, and it's finally nighttime. The moon is shining in the dark sky, and Sophia and Eve just got out of the shower. Both are refreshed, and Sophia has wrapped her hair up nicely in a towel. Eve asks Sophia to sleep together for the night, and she agrees. The mother-daughter duo looks adorable. That is when they hear a sound coming from the kitchen, and it's Lloyd, who is still trying to fix the stove he destroyed earlier. Eve asks him to finish up early and not stay up too late. Sophia, on the other hand, tightens her fist and tries speaking out something like Pa with full determination. She quickly completes her word and calls Lloyd Papa and tells him that she will sleep with Mama tonight. She says goodnight to Lloyd before leaving. However, Eve stands there shocked and completely excited because she was just called Mama by Sophia. She hugs Sophia for the millionth time and tells her that Mama will spoil her a lot tonight. Eve finds Sophia way too adorable and keeps hugging her. Sophia is overwhelmed while Lloyd just sits there by the broken kitchen pieces, questioning his existence. He asks Eve and Sophia to get to their room and continue. The Lloyd family is at the Dill Grand Frontier's Spiral River. Lloyd is performing stunts in the river and his daughter and wife are by the riverside. Eve is cheering on Lloyd with a speaker-like circular thing in her hand. It's as if Lloyd is participating in a competition, because Eve says that the final minute is approaching. Lloyd should keep it together and pierce through the waves. Eve calls Lloyd her handsome man as she cheers him on, and rightfully so. Sophia, far more mature than her new parents, stands by Eve's side and questions whether things ended up that way. Cut to the next scene. It's a bright sunny day outside the Lloyd mansion. Eve mentions that there are no clouds outside. That is when Lloyd asks Eve if they could do that. Eve responds in agreement, but Sophia stands there in utter confusion. She doesn't understand what that is until Lloyd and Eve mention in unison that it is the Great Cleaning Day for the Lloyd family. Lloyd is dead serious about it as if it's a war, while Eve is smiley as she always is. Eve adds that this day is dedicated to washing and cleaning every single thing present inside the house. She is extremely excited because it is their first cleaning day since the arrival of Sophia, and they are cleaning the room even more thoroughly on this special occasion. They better be calling Levi Ackerman to the cleaning party at this rate. Lloyd says that he will put the breakables away and gather the laundry. Sophia, still a bit confused but determined, states that she will also help her father. She understood the laundry assignment but had no idea about the breakables. Bed covers, curtains, carpets, and tablecloths are gathered by Lloyd. He opens the windows as well, and Eve thinks that everything is finally set. Eve puts her hands up in the air and unleashes her magical powers. A strong wind sweeps the mansion and all the dirt is sent out through the windows and doors by Eve's magical powers. So that is why all the breakables were taken out. Lloyd tells Sophia that there are way too many rooms to be cleaned one by one, so they choose to do it this way. Lloyd, the superhero of domestic disasters, did try it once before, but due to the extreme strength of his powers, the mansion was almost blown away. And as expected, Eve was very mad at him. As a punishment, he was made to sleep outside on one of the beds he sent flying out of the mansion. Lloyd further adds that it was really relaxing for him to sleep under a starry sky. We should all choose to be like Lloyd, positive and unbothered no matter what the situation is. Be it burnt meals, blown away mansions, or broken kitchens, nothing ruffles the superhero cape that Lloyd owns. After finishing the cleaning, Eve's hair is very disheveled and looks almost scary. Sophia points it out and Eve only has to shake her head to fix it. Next comes the laundry, and for that, the Lloyd family will be leaving for the river. They are at the Spiral River and Eve is cheering on Lloyd. Laundries are usually done at the well, but big stuff doesn't fit there, so the Lloyd family visits the river and Lloyd cleans the stuff. It is a form of exercise for the hero. When the laundry is done, even Sophia visits the hot spring to clean up, while Lloyd continues his exercise. Eve feels a bit unsure, so while enjoying the hot spring, she asks Sophia if she's having a good time. Eve knows that they are not exactly what a normal family is, but she quickly dismisses the thought and changes the topic. It is nighttime, and the Great Cleaning Day is finally over. Eve, in her dragon form, is taking her husband and daughter home under the starry sky. Sophia looks a bit zoned out, so Lloyd asks if she's alright. Sophia assures him that she is alright and points at the bright stars. Lloyd, still not over the night he spent outside the mansion, mentions that the sky is pretty much similar to that night. Eve, slightly embarrassed, confirms the incident. Sophia wonders if Mama will be mad at her too for doing bad stuff, and she is pretty much right, but she will not be made to sleep outside, says Eve. Sophia says something very heartwarming next. She remembers what Eve said earlier and mentions that she has a normal family. Having fun with her mama and papa is what she wishes to be normal. Lloyd feels good, and so does Eve after hearing what Sophia had to say. Lloyd tells Sophia that they will have even more fun the next day. They can try flying above the clouds in the thin air too. That is a little weird way to have fun, but sure. Cut to a scene in Iantown, the middle of a forest on a dark night. And there is chaos erupting. Someone calls onto a princess asking if she's alright. It is the Demon King's Duke's daughter that is in trouble. But what does this indicate for the Lloyd family? Is there trouble and drama coming? And will the family's happiness last long?